Thank you. So thank you for having invited me. Today my presentation deals with the use of water mist. So from the laboratory scale up to the tunnel fire safety application. So it's quite difficult to speak just after Luis and Stefan because they said so many things about water mist. So you will see that we have other objectives. We have a quite different approach. So I hope it will be interesting for you. I'm very honored to present a research conducted for a couple of years by CSTB, the French Building Governmental Agency, by l'ENFA, laboratory of the French National Center for Scientific Research, and for CNPP quite recently. So my presentation is divided in 4 parts. First, I introduce the context and the objectives. The second and the third parts deals with the results obtained at different scale. And last, I conclude and I give few perspectives. So first of all, let me introduce the context and the objectives. Since a couple of years, since 2004, CSTB has been studied tunnel fire in cooperation with French authorities and domestic laboratories because of the tunnel fires that have occurred in tunnel. Yes. For 1 decade. We can cite, for instance, the most tragically famous example, the Mont Blanc tunnel. It caused 39 deaths and severe damages on the structure. As Stefan Potsmayer said, a tunnel fire has very severe consequences, human and financial consequences, because of its geometry. The smoke is maintained within the tunnel. The smoke and the tunnel walls also participate to the combustion, and they also constitute a threat for people and firefighters. Secondly, the tunnel ventilation. The tunnel is always ventilation due to either the natural gas movement in the tunnel induced, for instance, by the vehicle movements, or due to the mechanical ventilation. And last, the potential it weight. When a fire occurs in a tunnel, it concerns a passenger car, a truck, or even a vehicles, all these type of vehicles have a very high calorific potential. So if you look at the requirement for road tunnels, they have significantly evolved for 1 decade, but authorities, particularly French authorities and French operators, are still looking for new ways and new systems for ensuring a higher safety level. And in that context, mitigation systems are more and more cited, and among them, a water mist system. As Stefan and Luis said, a water mist system is characterized by the droplet size. And if you look at the regulation, a water spray is considered as a water mist if 99% of the water is in drops with diameters less than 1,000 micrometers. So if you look at the phenomena which are involved when water is sprayed in a fire environment. First, gas and surface cooling. An amount of it is transferred from gas and surface to water droplets. Droplets are also evaporated, or heated and evaporated. Gas and surface are also cooled down. Secondly, radiative attenuation, in particular for water mist. A sample of droplets interact with thermal radiation, they attenuate the radiation by absorption and scattering effect. Third, the oxygen dilution. When water droplets evaporate, they create vapor, and because of the high volumetric expansion rate, it dilutes the other species, and in particular the fuel vapor and the oxygen. Last is the interaction with smoke. When water droplets are sprayed in a fire environment, they interact with the smoke layer due to the dynamic or due to the gas cooling. For designing water mist system now in a tunnel, the current understanding does not allow to design a system and to assess it based on the only basis of its own characteristic or the tunnel characteristic. For assessing a design, a watch-harness design, now you must carry out a world-scale test campaign, and as Stefan said, it is very expensive and it is very difficult to conduct, and the database is even difficult to analyze. So, the objectives of our research is to improve our understanding of the phenomena and to quantify them. The second objective is to evaluate the capability of computational tools for reaching the third objective, which is to determine the potential contribution of computational tools for assessing watch-harness system. And we chose in 2007-2008 the code FDS, the well-known code FDS Fire Dynamics Simulator, developed by NIST in cooperation with VGG for three main reasons. First, it is free and it's an open source. It means that you can look at the sources, what is done exactly. You can know the numerical scheme, for instance. You can even change a model quite easily. Secondly, it is widely used by the scientific community. In other words, there is an important feedback in the scientific literature, and in particular in the tunnel configuration. And last, there was already a water spray model included in the code. When I speak about a water spray model, I mean a model for inserting droplets in the computational domain, a model for transporting droplets, a model for heating and vaporizing them. And if you look at its guide, you can read that this code is developed for solving practical fire problems. And we considered in 2008 that tunnel fire is a practical fire problem. So we use it directly at the tunnel scale. And we were quite lucky at this moment because we had the database available. In fact, a test campaign was conducted between 2004-2008 at CSTB in a model tunnel. The scale ratio being around 1/3. It is represented there. It is 43 meters long. It is ventilated longitudinally thanks to a ventilation system which is mounted at the downstream side. It allows to extract a mostly constant volumetric flow rate. The fire load is always located at this location at 17 meters from the upstream extremity. And this scale has two main advantages for this research. We considered that there is a real fluid flow in the channel, and it is quite cheap. The chests are quite cheap, so there is a third reason. This scale ratio allows to install many sensors in the channel and to characterize the fire environment in most of the channel at several distances from the fire location. And in this campaign, we use most of more than 200 sensors in the channel. And the sensors concern many quantities, among them gas temperature at several locations, 9 meters upstream, 3 meters upstream the fire, 4, 8, 12, 24 meters downstream the fire. Gas velocity, radioactive flux, and we estimated the heat release rate of the fire by two approaches. First, by weighting the fire load, and secondly, by measuring the gas composition at 22 meters downstream the fire location. And a watch-harness system was installed in the channel. All the nozzles were the same. There were five orifice spray nozzles. It means that each nozzle produces 5 spray, and in a preliminary study we got that each spray can be characterized by an hybrid law parameterized with a mean diameter equal to 40 micrometer and dispersion parameter equal to 2.85. During this test campaign, we conducted 28 tests, and in this research we have only used 5 tests, 3 without water mist, 2 with water mist. And today I will only speak about the test 27. If you look at the 28 tests, many quantities, many things are changing. First, the ventilation regime. We tested many ventilation, longitudinal ventilation velocities for getting a different ventilation regime. There is one which is called a subcritical regime, where there is a back layering in the downstream, in the upstream side of the channel. It means that there is a smoke layer which culture flows out of the channel. And there is another which is called the supercritical ventilation regime, where all the smoke which is produced by the fire is pushed away in only one side of the channel. We changed also the fire load. We tested many fire loads, the wood quips, heptane pool, and another kind of wood quips, unfortunately. We activated or not the water mist, and in particular in test 27, it was conducted with a supercritical ventilation regime, with an heptane pool and with 6 nozzles, 3 nozzles located upstream the fire and 3 nozzles located downstream the fire. The approach we used for this research consisted in 2 stages, in 2 steps, an experimental step and after a computational step, where we first validated the code, and after the validation was achieved, we used the code for better understanding the situation, for quantifying, for instance, the phenomena, and for understanding the interaction between mist application and the ventilation, the tunnel ventilation. So today I will only speak about the validation and the extensive use of the code for test 27. For simulating such test, such a tunnel test, the input data concern mainly 4 aspects. First, the tunnel itself, its dimension and the thermal characteristic of its walls. Secondly, the tunnel ventilation. It is set thanks to a volumetric flow rate which is defined at the downstream extremity of the channel. The water mist system, and last, the heat release rate, the fire activity. We define the combustion reaction and also the heat release rate versus time. Here is the heat release rate, the fire heat versus time. In red, it's the estimated heat release rate estimated from measured weight loss of the fire load. In green, the heat release rate estimated from the measured oxygen consumption, and in the black, the input data we define. And as you can see, before mist activation, the input data fits both curves. And after mist activation, it only fits the curve for the oxygen consumption, since the water mist system is located at the fire location, so droplets can deposit in the pool fire, and it is completely useful. You can note the evolution of the heat release rate. Before mist activation, it's a well-known liquid fire. With a very fast fire growth and after a level off. And after mist activation, it is that's the key of this test. It does not involve a very high volume water quantity, so the heat release rate does not drop after mist activation, so it allows to study the fire environment during a couple of minutes after mist activation and during mist application. So for validating the code on this test campaign, we compared the temporal evolution of gas temperature, of heat fluxes, and of air velocity at different locations. And today I will speak about gas velocity and heat fluxes. So I compared the gas temperature at 8 meters downstream, 12 meters downstream, and 24 meters downstream at different heights on the vertical center line. The weight curve corresponds to the highest measurement point, and the orange color corresponds to the lower measurement point on the measurement section. So before mist activation, there is a general good agreement in prediction and in measurement. If you look, so the slope and the magnitudes are almost well predicted. If you look more into details, you can see a few discrepancies. First, the further the measurement section is, the better the accuracy is. The code tends to under-predict the gas temperatures very close to the fire location. Secondly, there is a bigger discrepancy between predictions and measurements at mid-height of the channel. This mid-height corresponds to the interface height between the smoke, which is flowing towards the downstream extremity, and the fresh air. It's a mixing zone between the smoke and the fresh air. And this is due to the grid cell size. After mist activation, as I said previously, this test is particularly interesting since mist activation does not induce a drop in heat release rate. And as you can see, there is an important gas cooling at the mist activation, and at all the distances. The gas temperature become even uniform over each measurement section. It illustrates the destratification, the thermal destratification of the environment. After a couple of minutes, after 420 seconds, when heat release rate increases again, you can observe a difference between temperature measured in the upper part of the channel and in the lower part of the channel. It illustrates a re-stratification of the environment. If you look at the prediction by LTS, it predicts pretty well, in fact, the first decrease after mist activation, the uniformity of temperatures, and after the re-stratification of the environment. Now the heat fluxes at 7 meters upstream, the fire location at 7 meters downstream, and if you look at the prediction, it fits the measurements upstream and downstream the fire location before and after mist activation. And you can see, especially after mist activation, there is a drop of heat fluxes, especially at 7 meters downstream the fire. So now, at this stage, we were quite confident in our simulation, and we tried to use it to better understanding the situation, and we made an extensive use of the computational results. So we studied many things, and for instance, we compared the cartography, yes, the thermal and the toxic cartographies in the downstream side, and we compared the profile, the vertical profile of temperature and of gas composition, and so in the dotted line, it corresponds to temperature at two locations, 8 meters in red and 12 meters in blue. In solid lines, it corresponds to gas composition. On the left, to oxygen concentration, and on the right, to carbon monoxide concentration. And as you can see, there is it confirms our observation based on the local measurement of gas temperature. We saw a difference between measurements in the upper part of the channel and the lower part of the channel. And if you look at the vertical profile of temperature, there is an obvious gradient in temperature at these two distances at the heat release rate peak. And despite this obvious gradient in temperature, there is an uniformity in gas composition at these two locations. So there is a very strong duality when mist system is activated. there is a strong duality between the thermal and the toxic environment when mist is activated. So we saw, based on the local measurements, that mist has an influence on the gas temperature, on heat fluxes, and it appears, based on the local measurements, that it induces a gas cooling and a reduction in heat fluxes. So we did an energy balance for measuring, for quantifying the mist contribution. If you look at the energy balance without water mist, the heat is released by the fire. This heat goes to heat the gas within the channel. This heat goes to heat the channel surfaces is transported through the openings. When mist is activated, it is transported by water droplets or is absorbed by water droplets. The energy balance before mist activation is represented on the left, and after mist activation it is represented on the right. Each color corresponds to the color of the schematics. The pink for the heat which goes to its gases within the channel, green to heat lost to surfaces, orange to heat transported through the opening, if you blue to heat absorbed by water droplets. If you sum all this contribution, you can get the black dot, and the fire heat corresponds to the red dots. So first, if you compare the black dots with the red dots, you can observe that the heat is conserved in the code, which is not so stupid, because in FGS the equation of heat conservation is not solved explicitly. So sometimes it's one of the criticisms against this code. Before mist activation, we can see that half of the fire heat goes to heat the surface and half is transported through the opening. So we can observe the high contribution of tunnel walls in this situation. And after mist activation, this distribution is completely modified since it's absorbed by droplets represent half of the fire heat. So, and a quarter of the fire heat goes to each the tunnel surfaces. So we can see that droplets absorb a very important heat in this configuration, and mist induces high decrease in heat loss to surfaces. So now, if you go further, we can distinguish three phenomena. First, the radiative attenuation, secondly the gas cooling, and last surface cooling. And we can see the contribution of each phenomenon in the heat absorption by water droplets. And we can see on this figure that it is mainly absorbed by gas cooling and after by radiative attenuation. And the surface cooling represents only 9% of the heat absorbed by water droplets. But this result is just going in contrary, is just opposite to the last result, where we said that mist activation induces a high reduction in heat loss to surfaces. So to better understand that, we plotted the heat loss to surfaces by convection and by radiation in three zones of the channel: in the upstream side, in the fire region, and in the downstream side. And so by convection it's on the left, by radiation it's on the right. Red curve corresponds to the fire region, blue curve to the upstream zone, and the green curve to the downstream zone. And as you can see, mist activation induces a high reduction in radiative heat to surfaces in the fire region. It means that water droplets that are sprayed in this region act as a radiative sheet between flames and tunnel walls. And we can see a second result, that it is that convective heat loss drop at mist activation in the downstream side. It's because of the gas cooling. We saw that it's a main phenomenon in this configuration. And because the smoke which is flowing towards the downstream side is cooled down, there is a reduction in heat loss to surfaces in this zone. So we shows that FDS was quite efficient as a channel scale, but what about fundamental scale, laboratory scale? And we studied many cases. From the strong we try to assess the model for transporting droplets. We try to assess a model for heat and mass transfer and the radiative model. And today I will only speak about the assessment of the radiative model because I have no time. So, for assessing the radiative model, I used a test campaign conducted in my laboratory. It consists in a spray produced by many nozzles, 7 nozzles. This spray is between a black body, which is emitted a radiation, and a spectrometer. And we compute the attenuation of the radiation by comparing the transmission with the spray on and with the spray off. And the black body and spectrometers are translated vertically at different distances from 20 centimeters to 100 centimeters. And is it good for the time? We can see that this is a laboratory scale test since the operating pressure is very low. It is only 4 bars comparing to the channel scale where the operating pressure is around 90 bars. But we are still working with a mist system since the soliter diameter is around 100 micrometers. If you look at the prediction of the attenuation versus the distance from the injection point, so from 20 centimeters to 100 centimeters, the black dot corresponds to the experiment, the blue curve to the Bergamot code, which is an in-house code which uses a Monte Carlo technique approach for resolving the radiative transfer equation. And the green curve corresponds to FGS. We can see that FGS tends to under-predict radiation attenuation. And the discrepancy with measurement is around 30%. With Bergamot, it is around 40%. So based on this evaluation, we looked more into details in the code. And in theory, if you want to compute the radiative properties of a sample of droplets, you have to integrate efficiencies over the spectrum and over the size distribution of these droplets. In FDS, it was assumed that this size distribution was locally equal to the one used at the injection point. So it was considered that locally it was a hybrid law, parameterized with a local mean diameter. A mean diameter was computed in each gas cell. And we propose a modification based on it is extracted from the literature. We suppose that the sample of droplets can be considered as a sample of droplets, a monodispersed sample of droplets whose diameter is equal to the soliter diameter, and it simplifies the equation. So it allows to we wanted to assess this modification, and especially because it reduces the computational time. And we did exactly the same test. We simulated exactly the same test, and we saw that there is an important improvement in prediction. And from 40%, the discrepancy with the measurement is equal to 1 to 10%. So summary. At the channel scale, we saw that FDS was almost able to predict the thermal environment and the gas flow, but we saw few discrepancies, especially before mist activation. We saw that its contribution of mist is important, and that the main mechanism is the gas cooling followed by the radiative attenuation, but it does not mean that mist does not induce a surface cooling. And we contacted the French authorities to say that we think that computational tools can be a very good complement to experimentation for better understanding the situation under certain conditions, if you know certain parameters. On more fundamental problems, we tried to assess few models of the water spray model of FGS, and some modification have been proposed based on this work. And now we want to continue our work on the code, on the sources. We want to characterize the situation, and especially the US condition and the operating pressure of firefighters. We want to work on the visibility, both with and without water mist, and we will conduct a test campaign in a test setup installed, built at CSTB. It consists in a room connected to a corridor, and at CNPP and BNTAS, they will study the influence of water mist on fire activity and combustion reaction.